Hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon when you're watching this video lecture. In the earlier session, we discussed about different sources of finance at a broader level, including long-term, medium-term, and short-term sources of finance, at least the list of them. And particularly when it comes to the long-term sources of finance, broadly, the finance or capital can be raised by two means. One in the form of share capital, whether it is equity or preference share capital, and second in the form of debt. Within that, also we discussed about the features, characteristics of equity, share capital, and preference share capital. What are the advantages and disadvantages of them from the point of view of the issuer, particularly, and certain types of points to be noted from the point of view of the investor also. For example, in case of equity share capital, it is the least risky source of finance for the company which is issuing it, and it is naturally the most risky form of investment for an investor. Because of that, naturally the expectation of investor will be higher, and because of that the cost of equity share capital will also be higher. So these are some of the long-term sources of finance, particularly in the form of share capital. Now let us continue this discussion with other long-term sources of finance from debt point of view. One of them is debentures, which is quite normally known name for finance students, particularly in India. So debentures is generally the word used in India, and bonds is the word that is used by other companies in the world. Technically speaking, there is no much difference between these two. However, some cases, at least from Indian context, we can say debentures are generally issued by the public limited companies, and bonds are generally issued by the public sector companies in India. Is there any rule like that? Nothing like that. It's only a general classification. To be very specific, there need not be any distinction between debentures and bonds. Both are same, both are debt instruments, only name difference. We call it debentures, Americans call it bonds. Mostly the name difference only, nothing much. But of course, as a matter of discussion, there are different types of bonds which are possible, and different types of debentures also which are possible. What are those? What are the different types of debt instruments that a company can issue in order to raise finance? Let us discuss about them in the current session. Going through the characteristics of debentures, this could be a question by itself. Generally, these are issued in different denominations ranging from 100 to 1000. Again, is there any rule like that? Nothing like that. Generally, that's what is the norm. Ranging from 100 rupees per debenture to 1000 rupees per debenture par value, nominal values. Like that, the debentures can be issued, carrying different rates of interest according to the market expectations and what the company can really offer to the investors. So that is what is again a general thing, not something that is a rule or a norm or something like a law. Certain things are hard, certain things are flexible. So this is only just for general understanding of what could be the denomination of the debentures ranging from 100 to 1000 rupees. And this is a word that is important from debentures point of view. Usually these debentures are all issued in India using a document called debenture trust deed. And what does that deed consist of? It consists of terms and conditions on the basis of which these debentures are floated, means issued. That is the document through which debentures are issued in India, that is called debenture trust deed. And usually these are used for raising long-term debt capital. Usually, that is what happens. And usually the period of maturity varies from 3 to 10 years. Any rule like that? No rule. Usually, normally, these are the general features of debentures in Indian context. And debentures may be secured debentures or unsecured debentures. Secured means they have a security of certain assets of the company. Unsecured means there is no backing on the basis of which these debentures are issued. Sometimes these unsecured debentures are also called as naked debentures. A lot of people don't prefer them, but still possibilities are there. Don't think that everything that we are looking at here is going to happen in the real life in the way it is, because a lot of instruments that we are looking at may not be attractive in real life. They may be theoretically there, possibilities are there, no bar in issuing them, but who will buy that is subject to the market conditions. So if the market accepts them, anything you can issue. Again, as I said earlier, what is the best source of finance? Whichever source of finance you can actually get finance. That is the actual practical point of the view. Theoretically, are there sources of finance? Multiple. So many of them are there, as we are discussing in this chapter. So that is why security debentures, unsecured debentures, yes, there is a possibility. But again, in reality, unsecured debentures, usually nobody likes. Who will buy unsecured debentures, particularly of companies? But yes, there are issues of unsecured debentures also. I'm not saying there are never issues of unsecured debentures, but they will carry naturally higher interest rates because the risk of them is high. Like that, it is about people. If they buy it, company will issue it. So it all depends upon the other side of the coin also. Company can have all these sources of finance in its hands, but only condition is there anybody to really buy these instruments? Is there anybody to really give you finance? If that is the case, then go ahead, issue any kind of instruments, whatever possible under the law of the land, and of course according to different types of instruments which are possible to be issued to the public. One of them is debentures. It could be secured or unsecured. It may or may not be listed on the stock exchange. Certain debentures are listed, certain debentures are not listed. Both are possible. If they are listed, they provide more liquidity to the investors, so that if whenever they want money, they can sell them in the stock exchange and convert them into cash. So generally that becomes more attractive. So listed debentures will be naturally more attractive than the unlisted debentures. Once again, it all depends upon other people whether they are interested or not. But possibility of both is always there. And very important point here is to understand in terms of the cost of capital is the cost of capital raised through the debentures is quite low. And this point is exactly opposite of the equity share capital. Equity share capital is the costliest share capital or costliest source of finance for the company, whereas the debt capital debentures is the cheapest cost or cheapest way with which the company can raise the finance. Why is that? Why is that? First of all, one reason is interest whatever we have to pay to the debenture holders is known already, whereas in case of equity, we don't know how much a dividend has to be paid, will be paid or not, or also is not known. So the interest on debentures is first of all reality, whereas equity dividend expectation is only expectation, not reality. That is one thing. Naturally, the expectation will be higher than the reality always. That is one logical thing, not a technical thing. But technically, why the cost of capital of debt, particularly in this context, debentures will be low? Because the interest that is payable on these debentures can be charged as an expenditure before tax. Is the interest payable on debentures a tax deductible expenditure? Answer is yes, it can be considered as an expenditure. So what does it do? It does reduce the profits. Incidentally and eventually it will also reduce the tax liability. That means what? It results in tax saving. So issue of debentures and paying of interest on those debentures is going to save down some tax for the company, because interest is a tax deductible expenditure. Now let us contrast this with other things like share capital. Is preference dividend tax deductible expenditure? First of all, it is not even an expenditure. Is equity dividend a tax deductible expenditure? Again, same, it is not an expenditure. Dividend on the shares is not an expenditure, it is an appropriation of profit. On one hand, there is no deduction for such payment of dividend from the company to the shareholders. So that benefit of tax deduction is not there for dividend. But the story does not end there only. On top of that, when you distribute dividends, the company has to pay the corporate dividend tax or dividend distribution tax. Means it is adding to the tax burden rather than deducting the tax burden or reducing the tax burden. Dividends increase the tax burden of the company. In contrast with that, interest on the debt reduces the tax burden of the company. From that point of view, the cost of capital, particularly from debt, is lower when compared with other types of financing like share capital. Of course, on the other side, from the investor's point of view, debentures offer a more attractive prospect than the preference shares, for sure. Why is that? Because interest on debentures is payable whether or not the company makes profit. Whereas in case of preference shares, dividend will be payable only when the company makes profits. So that is what I said earlier also. Preference shares is the worst possible instrument out of all, but still it is there. So we should know that. But we should also know that it is worst possible for many reasons. From the company point of view, preference dividend is payable. Of course, assuming that the company has profits, preference dividend is payable. So that means it is fixed. It is causing a pressure on the company's liquidity every time, every year, just like debentures or any other debt. On the other side, it does not give you tax deduction because that dividend is not an expenditure. On top of it, the company will have to pay dividend distribution tax on that. So it is neither giving any tax benefit. On top of it, it is giving tax burden to the company in the form of corporate dividend tax. Looking from the shareholder point of view, he is getting dividend, okay, fixed dividend. What if the company does not make profit? Then he will not get a dividend. So that is not a good proposition when compared with the debentures. If an investor wants to invest the money in debentures or preference shares, definitely he will choose debentures, because debentures at least he will get interest irrespective of whether the company makes profit or not. Whereas in case of preference shares, the investor will get money in the form of preference dividend only when the company makes profit. So for investor also, preference shares are the worst possible things. And even for investor point of view, if you look at and compare with equity shares, can preference shares usually get any share of the profits that the company makes? Can they be part of the ownership of the company? No, they are not. They are second grade share capital only. They are not the owners of the company. Do they have voting rights? No, they don't have. Or you don't have voting rights, you may get a dividend, you may not get a dividend depending upon the performance of the company. And you don't have any kind of ownership. Nothing is there for the preference shareholder that is attractive. Same way, nothing is there for the company to issue preference shares. Then why should they do that? That is obviously the reason why no company, almost no company, or we can say very negligible companies issue preference shares. That is not at all a preferred source of finance, but it is a source of finance. It is there. And for our problems and theoretical academic discussions, always it will come and somewhere it will disturb us. It has to do that. It will do that. We have to be just careful. We should not give so much of importance to that as long as it comes to us. If it comes to us, we will take care of preference shares. If preference shares is not in discussion, we should not bring it in discussion, giving it so much importance. It is not that important from practical point of view. But of course, if preference shares are there in the capital structure of a company, what we can do? Can we say, no, I will ignore that? No, you cannot ignore that. It is there, it is there. But if it is not there, don't try to bring preference shares in every discussion, and don't try to think about everything from a preference point of view. No. Everything that we normally discuss and understand the concepts of financial management, we will discuss from equity point of view, debt point of view. We don't discuss from preference point of view, because there is nothing called preference point of view or preference share capital point of view. That is a hybrid thing only. So that is something which is naturally less valued and even less respected, less preferred, and that is something which just exists, but in a very, very few numbers, very few percentage of companies. Almost negligible companies will have preference shares in real life. However, keeping all that aside, our job is only to know what are the advantages and disadvantages of equity and debt. Advantage of equity will become disadvantage of debt. Advantage of debt will become disadvantage of equity. These two are quite opposite of each other. And all the disadvantages of equity and disadvantages of debt will come to preference. So that is a fantastic combination of disadvantages which lies in between the equity and debt. That is an unfortunate point. So equity has its own advantages. It has its own advantages, no doubt. So when equity has its advantages, debt has its own advantages and disadvantages. The disadvantages portion is preference. That is what it is. Remaining is advantages portion for each of them. Of course, the balance between them is what the companies will do. They don't try to bring the preference in between, so that ultimately it will not serve any great purpose. So it is not any thing that is going to add any value to the company's capital structure, nor is it going to add much of value to the investor's portfolio. Both ways, that will be just there. So keep it like that, extra artist type. It is neither hero nor heroine. Somewhere it will be there, just as a side actor somewhere. That's all. The level of preferences. But keeping that apart, equity and debt, of course, are the two extremes. And as I told already, whatever the advantages of equity are there, those become the disadvantages of debt. Whatever the disadvantages of equity are there, those become the advantages of debt, both from investor's point of view and the issuer's point of view. But that also we should know what is advantages to the investor, that will be disadvantages to the issuer, and vice versa. So these points, if we understand which side we are standing, then it will be easier to appreciate these characters. And finally, when we reach to the level of understanding cost of capital and capital structure, there we can apply these concepts in a much comfortable manner. Now at a broader level, these debentures can be classified or divided into three categories based on their convertibility. Some debentures are non-convertible, means they remain debentures only. They don't have the feature of getting converted into equity. So what happens? They just will be repayable on maturity. That's all. They are pure debentures. When normally nothing is mentioned, debentures means non-convertible debentures only. They don't have the feature of getting themselves converted into equity or other types of shares. So those are non-convertible debentures. Fully convertible debentures are those which are converted into equity shares according to the terms of the issue. Of course, about what is the price at which the conversion will happen, when the conversion will happen, those things will be also mentioned at the time of the issue in the debenture trust deed itself. But when that time arrives, definitely fully convertible debentures become what? Equity shares. So fully convertible debentures will be converted into equity shares. And usually, naturally, the interest rates on such debentures are less than non-convertible debentures. Why? Because they have an attractive feature of getting themselves converted into shares at a later time. So when there is a little bit of more attraction for the fully convertible debentures, their interest rates will be lesser. So that is the general phenomena. Once again, we have to just understand why the kind of valuation or interest rates, what will be the market perception. When non-convertible debentures are there, they are just plain normal debentures. They carry some interest rate. When compared with them, the fully convertible debentures will be holding a lesser interest rate. Why? Because there is an attraction which is also there to these type of debentures. So people will be able to buy, people will be interested to buy, even if they are offering certain lesser rate of interest. So the companies will offer lesser rate of interest for such kind of fully convertible debentures. Partly convertible debentures are those, of course, as the name indicates, they have the features of both convertible and non-convertible debentures. Means what? They will have sometimes some portion of that convertible, some portion of that non-convertible. Means what? Investor can get the advantage of having the features of both convertible debentures and fully convertible debentures and non-convertible debentures in one security. So those type of securities are called partly convertible debentures. Let us say some debentures, any investor holding any number of debentures, 60% of them only he can convert into equity shares, 40% are non-convertible. Like that, there could be a condition. That means they become partly convertible debentures. They will have the features of both. These are the three types of debentures on the basis of convertibility. And other types of debentures on the basis of their features. We can just understand their names and what are the different types of debentures can be a question by itself. Should know the name as well as their feature also. What is the main feature? What is the type of debenture? You should know them as a list at least. Bearer debentures means what? Name itself indicates. These are transferable like negotiable instruments. Means there is no particular name on them. Whoever bears it, he is the owner of that debenture. So he is the person who has the debenture document, will be bearer, will be the holder of the debenture, and that will be the person who is identified and assumed to be the owner of the debenture. Nowadays these have no value and no reference or no relevance. Why? Because now all the financial instruments we are talking about are not in physical form. All of them are in electronic form. When they are in electronic form, definitely there will be somebody who is holding them. Bearer debentures in printed form, you can say at least there is a possibility. No name, but just a debenture is there. But as a can generally as we can generally understand, usually the bearer debentures and all are not possible to be issued also in India. Nobody can issue bearer debentures. Why? Because the bearer debenture is as good as money, and in India only Reserve Bank of India has the authority to issue money. So what is a bearer debenture? The best example of a bearer debenture is, of course, a non-interest carrying debenture. That is currency. That is a currency, that is money, printed money what we are looking at. So each note is a kind of a bearer instrument. Whoever holds it is the one who is the owner of it. There is no name written on that key, this note belongs to this person. No, nothing like that. Similar to that, if a company or a big company start issuing bearer debentures, they themselves become currency, and which is not permitted in India. So as far as technical and legal things are concerned, also in India, bearer debentures cannot be issued. But as such, even from the technology point of view right now, these things have lost their relevance long back. Even anywhere in the world also, these things are almost non-existent. But just theoretically, some namesake, they are there in the list. Registered debentures, as the name indicates, interest payable to only the person who is registered person, who will be in the register of debenture holders of the company. Those people only will get interest. That type of debentures are called registered debentures, which is opposite of bearer debentures. Bearer debentures will not carry any name. Registered debentures will carry the name of the holder or name of the owner of the debenture, whoever that person may be, whose name is written in the register of debenture holders. They will get the interest from the company. That is registered debenture. Then mortgage debentures, of course, usually the ones which are secured by a charge on the assets. Generally, these are the kind of debentures. We can call them secured debentures. Mortgage is only just one word. Secured debentures, we can call them. Unsecured debentures is another category. Also, as I told already, they can be called as simple debentures or naked debentures. Naked means without any protection. There is no protection for the debentures. The investors do not have any protection of any security backing these debentures. Those are unsecured debentures. Like that, redeemable and irredeemable debentures also could be there. As the name themselves indicates, redeemable means repayable after a certain period, and non-redeemable or irredeemable means not repayable after a certain period. Here there is one point also legally to be noted. If you recollect Companies Act, according to the Companies Act of India, any company cannot issue irredeemable preference shares. But there is no rule wherever in the Companies Act which says companies cannot issue irredeemable debentures. Irredeemable preference shares are expressly prohibited by the Companies Act. No such prohibition is there. Means what? Prohibition is not there means it is possible. Of course, nowhere it is mentioned that company can issue also. Law need not tell people what to do. Law should ideally tell people what not to do. So there is no bar on issue of redeemable or irredeemable preference shares in India according to the Companies Act. But of course, as I said already, who will buy them? Who will buy them first of all? We don't have to discuss on those things which are completely ridiculous in real life. Who will buy irredeemable debenture? Irredeemable means no payment at all, no repayment at all. Perpetual debenture we can call it. So the person who buys that debenture will keep on getting interest. After him, his legal heirs will get interest. After them, their legal heirs will get interest. But the original principal will never be repaid. Is there any possibility such any people will buy such kind of instruments, particularly in India? So just impossible. So we don't have to worry about the possibilities of legal possibilities also. Practically, nobody will buy non-redeemable debentures. Very less people or rarely people will buy naked debentures, and bearer debentures are almost impossible. So in general, when nothing is mentioned, what is the nature of a debenture? It is a non-convertible, registered, secured, redeemable debenture. Just a name debenture indicates all these features of that. One name, just debenture, it is mentioned. That means what? Implied what? It implies it is a non-convertible debenture. If it is a convertible debenture, it has to be clearly mentioned. If it is not mentioned, it is a by default non-convertible debenture. Bearer is not possible, so it is a registered debenture. Usually it is a secured debenture. Of course, there is no rule like that. But usually it is a secured debenture. And definitely it is usually a redeemable debenture. So these are the basic features of debentures. Normally also, whether these names are mentioned or not. Nobody is going to tell you non-convertible, registered, secured, redeemable debenture. That is the real features of that. Instead of all that, simply we just call it debenture. Debenture, that's all. any debenture just like that when we say, that means it has all those features automatically. That is about the characteristics and types of debentures, we can say. And there are various advantages of debentures. Of course, when you say raising of finance, we are talking from the company's point of view. And as we already discussed, the cost of debentures is much lower. That is the main point. And why is that also we discussed? Because of the interest expenditure being a tax deductible expenditure. That is a main point here. So that is one of the advantages of debentures. For the company, cost of the debentures is much lower. And of course, not only because of that, the return that is expected by the investors from the debentures also will be lower. Why? Because the risk is lesser for them. Because the investors are getting the interest irrespective of the company is making profits or losses. So the risk is more for them in equity. Risk is less for the investors in debentures. So when the risk is less, the return also will be less. Return for investors means cost for the company. Cost for the company because of that is going to be much lower. That is one of the advantages of raising finance by debentures. And of course, another point, as we discussed earlier in the case of equity, what are the disadvantages of equity? That will be advantages of debentures, naturally. One of the disadvantages of equity was what? That results in dilution of control. Now here, because of issue of debentures, this will not result in dilution of control. So that is one thing also which is advantageous. And sometimes in a period of rising prices, debenture issue could be advantageous. Why? Because money amount that we are going to pay is going to be still the same. For example, if a company promises that it is going to pay some 8% interest on debentures, just for example, and for on a 100 rupee face value debenture, normally 8 rupees will be paid. 8 rupees is going to be paid every year. First year, second year, third year, fourth year, like that. Let us say it is a 5 years debenture. Each year, how much this debenture, each debenture will get? 8 rupees only. 8 rupees only is going to be paid. But the point is, time value of money is not going to be same. Particularly when we say in the period of rising prices means high inflation. In that case, what happens? The value of money will not be same. Value of 8 rupees now is 8 rupees. But value of 8 rupees after 1 year is not going to be 8 rupees. It is going to be less than 8 rupees. And in the periods of higher inflation, the next year will be much lesser than that. Next year will be much lesser than that. Means what? The nominal amount that the company is paying as interest may look constant, but the real amount the company is actually spending because of the inflation effect is going to become lesser and lesser. That is the main point here. So when the company is paying a fixed rate of interest, basically the monetary outgo decreases in the real terms. Real terms means after adjusting for inflation. 8 rupees is not 8 rupees in real terms. 8 rupees is nominal. But really, what is the value of that? It will be much lesser than 8 rupees. Means the company is going to get advantage of that more in the periods of rising prices. That is one of the advantages, particularly under inflationary conditions. Of course, there will be other disadvantages of inflation. We don't have to get into that. But as far as debentures is concerned, that can be considered as one of the advantages. Now, what are the disadvantages? Biggest disadvantage for the company is the interest payment and repayment of the principal is obligatory. Compulsorily, the company has to pay interest irrespective of whether it has profits or losses. It has to repay to the debenture holders at the time of end of maturity period, whether it has money or not. It cannot say I don't have money. If it says I don't have money, the company is gone insolvent. Liquidate that company and pay them. That's what the court will tell. So they have to pay. It becomes an obligatory payment, a very big risk that the company will be under as far as this debenture issue is concerned. And what kinds of risks debt will put the company into can be classified into two kinds of risks. One is liquidity risk, the other one is solvency risk. Liquidity risk is that because of periodic payment of interest, compulsory that too, irrespective of whether there are profits or losses, the company will be always under pressure to pay this interest. It puts pressure on the liquidity, that means the current financial condition of the company or business. Solvency risk is about long-term repayment. So at the time when the real repayment of debentures is coming, when it arrives, if the company does not have sufficient amounts, then it will be a problem for the company to repay the debenture holders. That means the company is as good as insolvent. That means the solvency position of the company is under risk. So the debenture financing will put the company in two types of risks. One is liquidity risk and another one is solvency risk. And another disadvantage of the debentures could be the covenants. The protective covenants means the conditions associated with the debenture could be restrictive covenants. When the debenture trust deed is issued, that trust deed might come along with so many restrictions, because the debentures might be generally secured by mortgaging an asset as a security for that debentures. So that asset may not be sold, may not be mortgaged to other person, may not be used as the company wishes. A lot of restrictions could be there on the usage of those assets. So such kind of protective covenants might restrict the company's operations. Because of that, debentures could be acting like little disadvantageous instruments. And as I already told, the financial risk associated with the firm will be increased because of what? Whatever already was discussed in point 1. So that will increase the financial risk. What type of risk? That also you should write here. One is liquidity risk, other one is solvency risk. And another big pressure, once again, same thing. Since they have to be paid at the time of maturity, a large amount of cash outflow is needed at that time of maturity. And lot of times the companies may face difficulty in paying them in one shot. Lot of cash is required. That might be difficult for the company. So a lot of times it so happens that companies are not in a position to repay the debentures, so they may become insolvent also. Of course, for that purpose only, companies may create something like debenture redemption reserve, so that at the time of redemption they have sufficient money. So that is why debenture redemption reserve is definitely suggested. And sometimes in some kinds of companies it is compulsory also according to the Indian statutes. So that is the instrument called debenture. Advantages, disadvantages, characteristics and types of debentures, right? And that is one thing to be noted. Of course, when the issue of debentures happens, this issues should be generally rated by a credit rating agency. There are so many credit rating agencies like CRISIL in India or CARE, ICRA, like that credit rating agencies are there. According to those agencies' credit rating, the debentures will be labeled like A plus, A, B minus, B plus plus, B minus, B minus minus, like that, whatever they are. So depending upon that rating, investors will be interested in buying those debentures. It's a different story. A lot of times these ratings are also manipulated. Let us not get into those bad things that happen in real life. Now moving on to the differences between preference shares and debentures. Once we know the characteristics, definitely we should know the differences already. In the form of ownership, preference share capital is a special kind of a share. So can we call the holders of preference shares as shareholders? Yes, we can call them. But is debentures a share capital? No, it is not a capital share capital. It is a capital but not a share capital. It is loan capital. So it is a kind of loan that will be raised from the public. And preference shareholders enjoy priority regards to the payment of a fixed amount of dividend and payment of capital in case of winding up. And definitely the debentures will carry only fixed percentage of interest. And preference share capital or preference shareholders may not get dividend if the company is in losses, but basically debentures will get interest, debenture holders will get interest whether they are profits or losses. So basically what is the preference shares? It is a hybrid form of financing, as we already discussed. It is neither equity nor debt. It has some features of equity, some features of debt, and unfortunately both are bad qualities only. Some characteristics of equity and some characteristics of debt are attributed to preference shares, and debentures are the instruments usually same thing. For a fixed period of maturity, for a long-term capital, debentures are used as financial instrument to raise the capital. So there is no much difference as such. Just define what are the features of preference shares, define what are the features of debentures, match them. That itself is this table. That is about one category of debt capital, long-term debt capital, that is debentures. Now, moving on to bonds. Bond is also same. It is also a fixed income security to raise the funds. It can be raised through public issue or through private placement also. That is quite possible. Based on the call, bond can be divided into two categories: callable bonds and puttable bonds. These can be short note questions. All of them can be questions. What is a bond and what are different types of bonds? This is one type of classification. Callable bond means what? It is the one which gives a call option, which means the issuer can redeem the bond at any time before maturity at a predetermined price, usually known as call price, that will be generally at a premium. So normally, let us say the period of maturity for the bond is 10 years. In case of callable bonds, the issuer, means the company, can say that if it has lot of sufficient profits after 6 years itself, it can say, boss, all the debenture holders, I am going to redeem your bonds before even the maturity arises. That means for the next 4 years, it need not pay interest. So why should the debenture holders or bond holders give their bonds back to the company? They will not give. That is why usually the company offers them a premium so that the bond holders will surrender their bonds and company will redeem those bonds even before the date of maturity. Those are called callable bonds. That means the company has a right to call the bonds back. That is callable bonds. Puttable bonds means it is the other side. It gives the investor the option. It gives the investor the option to put back to the company before maturity. That means to sell the bond. So callable bond is that which gives the company, issuing company, a right to buy back, one way we can say. And puttable bond is that which gives the investor, the bond holder, the option to sell the bond at any time before maturity. Of course, any time does not mean just today he purchased the bond and tomorrow he will sell the bond. Not like that. Some time periods and conditions will be there. If there is a 10 years bond, let us say, after 5 years, at any point of time, the investor has the option to sell the bond at this price. Like that, there might be a condition in the debenture trust deed or the bond deed. So in that case, it is called as puttable bond. Callable bonds and puttable bonds are two categories. Once again, these are mostly international words and international concepts. In India, these are not very popular yet. They will still take some more time. Some companies rarely might have placed such kind of bonds, but still, those are not the things that are quite popular very widely in Indian context. So just for short note purposes, definitely it is important. Bonds can be classified into callable bonds and puttable bonds. Callable bonds give option to the issuer to buy back the bonds issued by them earlier at any time before the maturity. Puttable bonds give the power or option actually to investor to sell the bonds to the company at any time before the maturity. That's all. These are the categories of two categories of bonds. And now there are so many types of bonds with its features are given here. So many of them are there. In that, these are all foreign bonds. So many of them are there. Can we really remember and actually identify each of them? Not possible. So I would say you generally go through them. That is better. And particularly, you have to be very clear about certain types of bonds which are more popular and which are possible to be asked as the short note questions. Is there any guarantee that they only will be asked? There is no guarantee. But usually those are more popular. So that is a kind of selection what we have to do here. If you keep on going through each and every type of these bonds, that is going to take a lot of effort also, and it is not going to give any big result also, big advantage also. So what is the nature of it at a broader level is enough to understand. So foreign currency convertible bond, name itself indicates. Foreign currency bond, first of all, that means one issuer is issuing this bond not within that country. He is issuing this bond outside that country. That is first point. And it is a convertible bond. Convertible bond means it will be converted into equity shares later. So what happens here? It is one of the things which will be usually coming at a very low rate of interest since it is a convertible bond. And for the issuer, it is advantageous that they can get a foreign currency at a very low cost because they are issuing it not in their own country. They are issuing in some other country. That is why it is a foreign currency convertible bond. The third point is useless point. In case the bond has to be redeemed, the issuer has to make payment, and that time issuer may not have money. This risk is there for any bond. No? What is the specialty? For any debt instrument, that risk is there. So we don't have to separately tell that it is a big feature of this bond. But two features we can say: it is cheap at a low rate of interest. These bonds can be issued, and issuer can get foreign currency at a lower cost. That is foreign currency convertible bond. Like that plain vanilla bond. So plain vanilla bond is not something that you have to be very clearly writing or having a separate short note, because there are so many points here to fit a 5 marks question. But one point, the word plain vanilla is important. That will be used later also. Plain vanilla is that. These are generally used in a very comical sense, but throughout the world, the financial terms themselves are like that. They are like that. We can't help it. That is what they are popular as. So plain vanilla means, what does the meaning of that is? There is no chocolate topping, there is no nothing, no cream, no nothing. Only plain vanilla bond. Means the principal amount will be paid along with the interest rate. So that is the main point here. And it will not have any kind of options. It is a very simple bond, no options. And it can be issued either in the form of a discounted bond or can be issued in the form of a coupon bearing bond. Coupon means interest. These are all American terms. We are talking American subject here, that is financial management, particularly in the form of markets. So whenever we use the word coupon means interest. So that is to be understood. Why is that? Why is this called vanilla? Why interest is called coupon? Each of them, that can be a story. We can have a long discussion on that. So we don't need to get into all those things. Simple things we can understand and remember, that is enough. So if certain questions will have answers, certain questions will not have answers. Why in UK and in India we have steering on the right hand side of the car, and why in America the steering is on the left hand side of the car? We can't answer that. It is their choice. They are taking like that. Why we have to go on the left hand side of the road, and in America they have to drive on the right hand side of the road? No answer for that. No, not much possible to give a logical answer for that. So there are things that change from country to country, and usually in the financial management, America prevails. That is one thing we have to understand. Costing is European, more British. This financial management is American. So these words and things will be little very less formal, and more practical, I would say. That is American style. American style is different. For example, if I say there is a bearer check in British English, we are used to this. Check means CHEQUE, but Americans don't write like that. Check means check only for them. But when we see check in India, we will think that this check means paper checking, like that. No, in America, check means this check only. That is that. Of course, that meaning is also there for that check. So it can be used either way. According to the context, we have to understand. They don't use this CHEQUE and all that. They just say check means CHECK. That's all. So a lot of things, American English and British English will be different. We don't have to be experts of them. But yes, we have to be knowing the technical words. You cannot say coupon means interest. I don't know. You cannot say that. Coupon means interest. Every finance person should know that. That is in American language. Coupon means interest. Coupon rate means interest rate. That is the point to be noted. So plain vanilla bond can have two types of possibilities. Either it can be a coupon bearing bond where interest is payable, and deep discounted bond or discounted bond means something like a zero coupon bond or less interest rate bond, where the bond will be issued at a lower rate and then later it will be redeemed at a higher rate. So that's a very simple bond. Means simply when nothing is mentioned, just a bond is mentioned, that means it is a plain vanilla bond. No conversion, no nothing, no option, nothing will be there. Simple bond, that's all. That is plain vanilla bond. Like this, there are so many other things. Convertible floating rate notes. Floating rate means the rate of interest will be floating. It will not be a fixed thing. That is FRN. Floating rate notes, it can be called as. And drop lock bond, like that. One more type of bond is there. These are general things, you can just go through them. And variable rate demand obligations. Variable rate also is a floating rate bond. Yield curve note. This is another type of bond. These are the different types of bonds. We don't really have to focus too much. Generally, if you go through them, that will be enough. But these are the bonds which short note questions will be asked now onwards. These are the different variety bonds. Those are all there. So here, Yankee bond. Yankee means generally the New Yorkers are called Yankees. America, basically. So these are the bonds which are denominated in US dollars. Those are called Yankee bonds. And why these bonds are issued? These are issued by non-US banks and non-US corporations. If an American company issues bonds in America, is it called Yankee bond? No, it is not called Yankee bond. It is called just a bond. It is a plain vanilla bond, or whatever the kind of bond it is, convertible, non-convertible. That is a normal thing because it is a domestic issue. But here this is not a domestic bond, it is a foreign bond. Yankee bond is something which a non-American corporation, a non-American bank issues denominated in dollars. But where it issues? It issues in USA. In other words, other countries, companies and banks are raising finance in USA in the dollars, then by issuing Yankee bonds. That is one of the types of source of finance. Of course, they have to be registered with SEC, like we have SEBI in India, Securities Exchange Board of India. Like that in America, they have SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission. Both are same, names are different. In India, we call it SEBI. In America, they call it SEC. Roles are same. That is a market regulator. That is why these bonds have to be registered with that regulator called SEC. And usually they are issued in tranches. Again, not necessarily. Usually, tranches means levels, one after the other. Not all the bonds are issued in one shot. First tranche, second tranche, like that. Rounds, round 1, round 2, round 3, like that. And time taken can be up to 14 weeks. These are all same. That's okay. Interest rate could be LIBOR, that is London Interbank Offered Rate. Dollar LIBOR, that could be. Again, these are all general things, not necessary, compulsory. It could be anything. But what is the main feature of them is these are dollar denominated bonds issued in America by non-American companies. That is the main feature of Yankee bonds. Same logic if you apply, you will understand all the other types also here. What is a Euro bond? Euro bond is not about euro here, by the way. Yankee bond is dollar, so Euro bond is euro. No, it should not be looking like that. Any bond traded in a country using a currency other than the one in which the bond is denominated, that is called as Euro bond. So if at all this is issued or traded in a country using some currency other than the one in which the bond is denominated, which means the bond uses certain currency but operates outside the jurisdiction of the central bank which issues that currency. So that's what is Euro bond. For example, if Germany issues, some company from Germany issues bonds in Japan, right? That can be called as a Euro bond. If Germany issues and raises capital from India in the form of rupees, let us say, it's not allowed, but if at all it does, then that is called Euro bond. Means it has nothing to do with euro. That's what you have to understand. Yankee bond has to do with dollars. America, Yankee is American representation. New Yorkers are called Yankees. That's just a casual name. As I told, the words in financial management will be very casual. We can't help it. That's how it is. We laugh at them or not, doesn't matter to that. That is why stock exchange terms are also animals only. Bulls, bears, stags, like that. Lame duck. These are the names given to various players in the stock market. So these are all marketings and modern financial world names and nomenclatures are very casual and very informal, unlike the traditional British type of nomenclature. So that is what we have to understand and get with that, because the subject is like that. So Euro bond is one thing that is misleading. Other bonds names can tell us what it is. Main point is all the times you cannot go with name. Euro bond, people cannot write, oh, it is a bond which is issued in euro currency. No, sir. No. That has nothing to do with euro. It could be a bond issued by any company from one country, but traded in another currency other than the currency that the bond is denominated. So the bond is denominated in one currency and that is traded or issued in another country completely. So in that case, it is called as Euro bond. So they are issued by multinational corporations. For example, if you understand this, that is a better way. A British company issuing Euro bond in Germany, denominating in US dollars. Possible. Company is British, issuing Euro bond in Germany, some other country, denominated in what? Something else, not British pound. It is US dollars. Possible. So then it is called Euro bond. So like that, multinational organizations can issue these bonds. And main point here to note is the term has nothing to do with the euro. The prefix euro here is used only generally to refer the deposit outside the jurisdiction of the domestic central bank. That's all. Euro is the word. You should not use it as Europe. There is no relation with Europe to this bond. There is no relation to the currency called euro also to this bond. This euro is denominating, or it is denoting only that this is being issued in a jurisdiction outside the domestic central bank of the company which is issuing it. That's all. That is Eurobond. Then samurai bond, as the name indicates, samurai means what? Immediately what you should remember? Japan, naturally. So these are Japanese yen denominated bonds. So Japanese yen denominated bonds. So will it be a Japanese company? No. If a Japanese company issues Japanese bonds, there is no speciality in that. That will not come under here. It is definitely a bond denominated in Japanese yen, issued in Japan, Tokyo, by a non-Japanese company. And who will regulate it? Naturally, Japanese will regulate it. That's all. Usually, why this is more popular in the world is, in Japanese market, the capital is available abundantly, more than other countries. In fact, in the Japanese banks, the interest rates are negative. So the capital availability there is abundant. So naturally, a lot of companies will try to capitalize on that, will try to capture that capital, will try to access that capital. So this samurai bonds is one of the modes through which they can access to the Japanese capital. And the issue proceeds can be used to fund Japanese operations, of course, and they can be used to fund companies' local opportunities, or it can be used to hedge the foreign exchange risk also. Foreign exchange risk, if they have, that can be also hedged against. Again, hedge is a word which is bigger one to understand at this point. But yes, hedging means trying to go do anything opposite of something that might happen as a risk. So mitigating the risk, trying to reduce the risk is one of the ways of doing that is hedging. That is a word that is used for it. So these are the purposes and features of samurai bond. Again, main feature you have to remember is it is a Japanese yen denominated bond issued in Japan by a non-Japanese company, regulated by Japanese, and of course the proceeds can be used for Japanese operations. Imagine if Apple has a manufacturing plant in Japan. It needs yen there because for local people it has to pay salaries and everything in yen only. So majorly the Japanese operations, it has to first of all start and build a factory and all. What it can do if it wants to, doesn't want to, and it doesn't, generally did not do it also. I'm giving an example only. What it can do is it can issue a samurai bond in Japan, and it can raise the capital of Japanese people and invest there only and get profits there also. That is all quite possible if the people are buying it. All these things will come with one condition supply. When these things will be successful, when the issue is successful, that's all. But possibilities are there. We are only looking at technical and theoretical possibilities. Practical possibilities are completely depending upon local circumstances. They will keep on changing. They will not be static like this. But the features and names of these things are more or less static. So we are learning them. So we are trying to remember and trying to reproduce them in the examination to get some marks. Each of them can be a short note question. These were asked also. So write a short note on the following: Yankee bond, masala bond, like this, samurai bond. What are they? They have to be just understood. Logic, if you understand, Yankee bond, samurai bond, both are same. Bulldog bond also same. Bulldog here is, who is Bulldog? Bulldog is UK. That is why the denomination of currency here is GBP, that is Great Britain pound, also popularly called pound sterling. Pound sterling. So that is called Bulldog bond. Of course, naturally, when it is pound sterling, it has to be issued where? It has to be issued in London. Is it to be issued by a British company? No, definitely a non-British, non-UK company. Who will regulate it? Great Britain will regulate it. And what is the purpose? Same. Access of capital available in UK market, and these issue proceeds can be used to fund the UK operations, and also it can be used to fund the local opportunities of the company. Quite possible. All are same. Like samurai bond, here also same. Only country changed. Features are same. Samurai bonds Japan, Bulldog bonds UK, Britain, London. That is what various types of foreign bonds are. Now coming to Indian bonds, which are possible, that is masala bond. Just Americans are called Yankees, Japanese are called samurai. As per these names, not necessarily every Japanese is a samurai. Not necessarily that every American is a Yankee. America has so many places and cities in which New York is only one of them. Yankees means only New Yorkers actually. But just an indication. We should not go by the literal meaning of that. So the American bonds are usually called as Yankee bonds. American bonds means not issued by American companies, issued by non-American companies in America. Those are Yankee bonds. Issued by non-Japanese companies in Japan, samurai bonds. issued by non-UK companies in UK, that is Bulldog bonds. Now same thing, issued by non-Indian companies in Indian currency are called masala bonds. So India is more popular in the world as masala. So masala bond is basically a bond which is rupee denominated bond, just like Yankee bonds are denominated in US dollars, Bulldog bonds are denominated in GBP, like that Samurai bonds are denominated in Japanese yen, masala bonds are denominated in rupees. However, main difference you have to understand, in all the other cases earlier, those bonds are issued in the country, the name of which is there in the bond. Yankee bonds are issued in America, Samurai bonds are issued in Japan, Bulldog bonds are issued in UK. Masala bonds are not issued in India. These are issued in Indian currency, yes. Indian rupee denominated, yes. But these are not issued in India. These are issued by Indian corporate borrowers to sell the investors in overseas markets. So don't think that all the earlier bonds and this bond is same. One commonality is only that these are denominated in the currency which the bond name is indicating. Masala bond means immediately this bond is denominated in Indian rupees. Yes. Is it issued in India? No. Issued by Indian companies? Yes. Where? Overseas. Means outside India. Somewhere in, let us say, Dubai. Masala bonds are issued by an Indian company. Possible. Possible. They can raise finance from there and they can raise finance in Indian currency from there. So like that, masala bonds are issued overseas by the Indian companies denominated in rupees. And they are issued outside India but denominated in Indian rupees. That is one of the features. And issued by whom? Indian borrowers, Indian corporate borrowers naturally. And they, where these are sold or issued outside India, denominated in Indian rupees. One of the examples that happened actually in real life is in 2016 NTPC, National Thermal Power Corporation, raised 2,000 crores rupees via masala bonds for its capital expenditure purposes. So this is not something that is very uncommon. Indian corporates have this access to the world capital markets by issuing masala bonds in other countries, but denominated in Indian rupees. This is one of the possibilities of source of finance for bigger corporations, small companies who will subscribe to them in foreign countries. NTPC being a very huge company and a very popular and reputed company, definitely that issue was successful. 2,000 crores it has raised means not a small amount. So that was masala bonds. Municipal bonds are also quite common in Indian context. Lot of local authorities, municipalities and corporations particularly, they are issued by the municipal corporations and municipalities. And what is the purpose? Usually the money raised from these bonds will be used for infrastructure of the local authority or municipality. One of the examples is Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation issued a municipal bond in Asia to raise 100 crores rupees from capital market for financing a water supply project, that to part financing. Like that, source of finance are there. All that is you have to tap. Municipal bonds is one of them. Naturally, name itself indicates these are issued by municipalities and municipal corporations. One example is Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation raising finance of up to 100 crores by issuing these municipal bonds. Like that, the governments keep on issuing treasury bonds on a daily basis. Almost very regularly, the government treasury bonds will be issued by Government of India, Reserve Bank of India, and any state government or any other government department, but usually by Government of India and Reserve Bank of India. State governments directly all the times cannot issue treasury bonds and all. But yes, when they have the permission, they can do that. But of course, they have a lot of restrictions. They have something like FRBM Act applicable to them. So Fiscal Responsibility and Budgetary Management Act. Within those restrictions, state governments also issue some bonds. They can, but again, the point is conditions apply, restrictions are there. But RBI can issue anytime. There it will be self-regulatory. Definitely, RBI keeps on issuing this treasury stock and treasury bonds. Government bonds are always issued, central government bonds, and that is a common feature that happens quite normally. So main point here why these bonds are important in Indian context is, in India, these are considered to be the risk-free bonds. So if there is any security in India, for that matter any country, which is risk-free, that is the government security. So government security means the central government security or RBI securities are considered to be risk-free. So naturally the rate of interest on them will be very less return these government bonds will give. But still, lot of corporations will invest in those government bonds treasury bonds ranging from 1 week maturity to 10 years maturity of sometimes, longer term also sometimes. So different types of government bonds are quite common. So these are the different types of Indian bonds, we can say. Though there are a lot of foreign bonds, popularly some of them useful for short note questions are the last four: Bulldog bond, Samurai bond, Euro bond and Yankee bond. Other Yankee, Samurai and Bulldog have common features. People will mess up with Euro bond. Euro bond, people will write Europe, Euro currency, blah, blah, blah. With the common general knowledge they will write, they get 0 marks for that. Euro bond is completely different. These are the ones which are issued by one country's company using a currency other than the one in which the bond is denominated. So the bond is denominated in one currency and it is traded in a country of another currency. So that is called as Euro bond. Completely it is different from other types of bonds. Other things are not that important, but as a word, plain vanilla bond is a possible short note question. Remaining things are generally not that popular also, not that important also. These are the various types of bonds. Now, this is just a general knowledge in an Indian context of financial institutions. There are so many financial institutions in India. One is Industrial Finance Corporation of India, and then state financial corporations are there. Every state has its own financial corporations. IDBI, now it is converted into bank. That is Industrial Development Bank of India, not there anymore. Now it is converted into bank. ICICI also is converted into bank. This is one more thing. That also is ICICI Bank now, not anymore ICICI. Earlier it was called Industrial Credit and Investment Corporation of India. And like that, National Industrial Development Corporation is there. That is one of the other things. Like so many corporations are there, which are kind of financial institutions, national financial institutions we can call it. Life Insurance Corporation of India, Unit Trust of India, and Industrial Reconstruction Bank of India. So many industrial and investment corporations, financial corporations we can say, financial institutions are there in India. Most of them are in public sector. Some of them have been converted into private sector also, working well and under both the sectors according to their capabilities. And like that, there are international institutions also, the financial institutions. Popularly, we know these things. The World Bank. We know the word World Bank is more popular, but what is the real technical name of that? That is International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. That is also what we call popularly World Bank. IFC is one of the biggest finance corporations in the world. That is International Finance Corporation. Asian Development Bank is one of them. The list is endless. We are only giving an examples here. Like that, there are so many international banks, international financial institutions, which will offer finance to governments also, and sometimes to the private companies also, if the projects of those private companies are matching with their financial institutions' objectives. So that is one way of source of finance. So in the case of debt, we had debentures, we had bonds, we had loans from financial institutions. Now there could be loans from commercial banks also. Unfortunately, this is one of the major source of finance in India. Ideally, it should not be. Throughout the world, loans from commercial banks is not generally given for long term. In India, it is opposite. In India, the loans from commercial banks are given for medium term and long term also. Ideally, the loans from commercial banks should be there only for short term purposes. The banks throughout the world will only meet the working capital requirements of the companies. Working capital requirements have to be met by banks, which is understandable. Why? Because working capital requirements, who will finance otherwise? Difficult. Banks will finance, which is understandable because banks also will have certain deposits, and definitely these deposits have to be advanced by them in the form of loans to some other customers, and they have to earn interest on that. That is the basic business of banks. But the point is, when most of these deposits are short term, how can the banks lend to very long term and highly risky projects is the biggest question, and that is what usually brings in Indian context higher amount of non-performing assets. Why? Because our banks have been giving huge amounts, not small amounts, huge amounts to big corporates and big at least known, popular, famous people, maybe on the basis of name or goodwill or whatever the reasons there could be, or political pressures, we don't know that. Because of that, high amounts of loans have been given or lent by the banks to various people for long-term purposes. This is the problem. If they give for short-term purposes, working capital purposes, actually the banking system will not have any issue. But if they start giving for long-term purposes, particularly for businesses, then that becomes a problem. And same thing we would have experienced in America also, when the American housing loans have piled up. Housing loans is a long-term thing. It is not a short-term thing. When that housing loans have been given by the American banks to Tom, Dick and Harry, everybody, then that created 2008 crisis. So it has a proven thing throughout the world, and it's technically and theoretically also everybody agrees with that. All economists and financial experts will agree with that. Ideally, banks should focus only on the short-term financing. They should not be entering into the long-term financing. Ideally, yes. But the problem is that much of short-term financing requirement may not be there. More requirement may be there for long-term financing. For example, countries like India, they require a lot of investment. We are still a developing country. Country like America may require short-term financing. That's okay. Understandable. Developed countries require only working capital. Already investment, whatever is supposed to be made, already made. Infrastructure is ready, investment has been made, machineries are already there, everything is there. Only they have to run the business, that's all. But for us, it is not the case. We need still a lot of investment to be done into our infrastructure, into our factories, into our new offices and new businesses. New construction has to happen. So where from all this money come? It will not come from the capital markets in India. That is the unfortunate situation. The capital markets in India means the stock market. In the case of in Indian context, primary market means initial public offering. How many initial public offerings we see normally in a year? Negligible. But is that the amount of capital that is required in this country? Not at all. Less than 10% or maybe much less than that. Maybe less than 5% of the investment needs of India are met by IPOs, means remaining 95%, where from they have to get the money? There is no possibility of raising finance in India in such a manner from capital market. Very problematic situation for raising finance. So it has problems from all the sides. For the company side or corporate side or the we can say the industrial sector side, they need money but they don't get money from public, because public are not much having trust in the stock market. Very few people have trust in the stock market. It has its own reasons, and that is, we cannot completely say it is wrong also. But the problem is, because of that, access to the capital markets is very less. When there is no access to the capital markets, you cannot access public money directly. What is the source of finance that major companies in India will get? That is loans from commercial banks. That is where we have entered into a situation where our commercial banks are pressurized to give loans to various sectors, and they keep on giving loans to different types of companies, long-term loans. And those loans, once they are not being in a position to be repaid, become NPAs. They become non-performing assets to the bank. That means they become bad loans and bad debts eventually. That problem arises when long-term loans are given by the banks. But as I said, theoretically, the primary role of the commercial banks is to cater to the short-term requirements of the industry. That is the primary role. This is theory. Everybody traditionally agrees with that. But now what happened in the world? Banks have become over smart, or maybe they have become stupid. We don't know how to categorize that. They started taking interest in the long-term financing industries also. They want to expand their businesses, and because of that, they are taking huge risk. And if they expect return from that, if they get the return, we only will clap for those banks. We say these are the pride of our country. If they don't perform well, we only will tell that, oh, these banks are dangerous and these banks are having a lot of bad loans. This bank will go bust. This bank is going to become bankrupt. All the negative things we only will tell them. So the point of managing that is the crucial aspect. Some banks will be successful, some are not. So like that, the commercial banks loans in India is a different ball game altogether. Mostly these are long term and medium term rather than short term. But whereas the theoretical financial management principles tell us that you should give for short term purposes only, not for very long term purposes. But our practical situation in the country is not supporting that. So naturally there is a situation where we are going against theory. When we are going against theory, naturally something wrong will happen. That is what is happening in the country. and solutions could be many, but the problem is still there. That's the situation. So what kind of loans the banks are giving to the industries? They give long-term loans also nowadays for the purpose of expansion or for setting up of new units. Usually it is scheduled over a very long-term period of time. And what is this point of giving such loans to these people? Depending on the anticipated income of the borrowers. Anticipated income of the borrowers. State Bank of India almost gave more than 6,000 crores to the Kingfisher Airlines. And if somebody asked them why you gave 6,000 crores, then they said Kingfisher Airline is anticipated to get profits. So we gave them. But it did not get profits. So gone. Kingfisher Airlines gone. Vijay Mallya gone. State Bank got a bad loan on its books. So the problem with these type of loans is they are given on the basis of anticipation of some income of the borrowers. If that income is there, these loans are good loans. If that income does not come to the borrowers, then the same loans become bad loans and the banks will be in trouble. That is one of the problems or risks with long-term financing, but still banks are doing it because in India, as I said, if banks stop doing it, our economy is going to be again a big problem. That is a catch-20 situation it is called. If banks do not give this long-term credit, our economy will not grow. If the banks give this credit, our economy will grow, but bad loans will also grow along with that. So what happens ultimately is a kind of somehow to let the economy grow, we have to bear with those losses of whatever NPS, bad loans, Malyas, Nirav Modis, all these people, we have to excuse them. We can't help that. We want growth. We have to take the risks like that also. We cannot have both. Oh, I want all my banks to perform well. All my banks have to give loans very cautiously. Then if very cautiously loans are given, nobody will get loan in this country. So no business will be there. No growth will be there. No employment will be generated. Economy will be done. That's the problem. Slowdown will happen. Further, that will lead to recession in future. On the other side, extravagant loan bonanza like that happened in 2000 almost 4 to 10 period. Huge loans mela happened in India. Left and right banks have given loans. Growth happened or not? Yes, excellent growth happened. If you see the economy numbers, GDP growth and all super happened. So many malls and all new things which we never knew before, all were there in that period only. After the 2000 and up to 2010, 11 or 12, we can say, these all things happened in that one decade or a dozen years in India. Tremendous growth happened. But it comes with a cost. It comes with corruption. It comes with these type of bad loans and piled up NPS in the banks. So these are the ways how the things work. It will not work like, as I said earlier, on or off, good or bad, plus or minus, north or south. It will not work like that. It is not working in binary. There will be some good also, some bad also. More good, less bad. Okay, Baba, chalo. More bad, less good. Do some corrective action. Like that, the things will work. It is a circus. It is a circus. Imagining a company's CFO doing a circus. Now imagine the country itself managing the finance of that will be a biggest circus. And this happens through various financial institutions. And one of the major roles played by the sector is banking sector. And that is the crucial aspect of Indian financial scene, we can say. And also they will give sometimes called working capital term loans, what the banks might give. Those are like working capital loans only, but little bit long term in nature. We can call them as medium term also, whatever. So that kind of loans also the commercial banks in India will give. And another very important theory question is bridge finance. Bridge finance was given as short note question earlier, and as usual, people don't read them. People don't really listen to the things and don't write notes on themselves. They think they are over smart and they can write anything in the exam. So some person started writing bridge finance means that is a finance given by the banks to construct bridges and things like projects and things like dams, etc. Like that they have written. 0 marks you will get. In addition to that, you will get bad impression from the valuer. Don't write nonsense like that. Bridge finance is not the finance to construct bridges. No, it is not. Don't go by the name. Name has meaning, but that is not the meaning. The meaning is different. Bridge finance is the finance given to bridge the time gap between granting of the loan and disbursement of the loan. So usually, if a company approaches a state finance corporation, let us say for a loan of 5 crores, let us say state financial corporation has sanctioned it. But sanctioned means today it is sanctioned, tomorrow disbursement happens in India. No, it will not happen. It will take time, some time, 10 days, 15 days, 1 month, whatever it could be. It may take some time. In this meantime, taking that sanction letter, this person can go to any bank and raise the finance to start the work rather than waiting till the final disbursement happens. So, for this very short period of time, the banks will give finance to such people whose loans have been already sanctioned by the financial institutions but not yet disbursed. Those type of loans or finance given by the banks is called as bridge finance. They are given by the commercial banks for a very short period. But it is a very important step in the facilitation of the long-term loan. So it is along with the long-term sources we are discussing that. So usually what happens is, this is the story. It takes time for the financial institutions to disburse the loans to the companies. But once the loans are approved by the long-term, the term lending institutions, companies need not lose further time. They don't have to keep on waiting for the disbursement. Rather, what they can do, they can take that sanction letter and go to banks and arrange for short-term loans from commercial banks. And these are going to be repaid or adjusted out of the term loans as and when disbursed by the concerned institutions. Let us say the State Finance Corporation has granted 5 crores loan on say 1st of January, and disbursement is expected to happen only on 24th of January. According to their sanction letter, they said by 24th we will disburse it also. What should we do in this meantime? Should we keep on waiting till 24th January? Not necessarily. What you can do is take these 5 crores to any bank and take a short-term loan of that. Maybe they will not give 5 out of 5. Whatever you want to start with, at least some work can be started. Take 2 crores loan by taking this letter from a bank, from a commercial bank, and start the work. And once the 5 crores is taken from the financial institution on 24th of January, give this commercial bank 2 crores and remaining 3 crores will be with you. Of course, because these are short-term in nature, interest rates will be high. Interest rates will be naturally higher as compared with on the term loans. One point again you have to understand, interest rates will be higher for short-term. Short-term interest rates are higher. Long-term interest rates are lower. That is always the basic principle of interest. Time period of the loan is lesser, interest rate will be higher. Time period of the loan is higher, interest rate will be, rate we are talking. Interest rate will be lower for long term, higher for short term. That is the main point to be noted. So because this is a short term loan, these are having and carrying a higher amount of or higher rate of interest. So these can be secured by any kind of things like hypothecating mobile assets or personal guarantee, promissory notes, etc. Of course, showing the sanction letter is important. Without showing sanction letter, just like that, I have something, I have information from State Finance Corporation that they may sanction me 5 crores loan. Can you give me 2 crores loan? Like that, if you go to any bank, they will kick you out. Definitely, they need some proof that this loan has been sanctioned. It is almost as the on the final stages of it, are sanctioned also already. Just some small formalities may be remaining. Once those formalities are finished also, the loan will be disbursed in a short period of time. If such a situation exists, then the banks, commercial banks, provide bridge finance to those companies which got these sanctioned loans from financial institutions but not yet disbursed. During this period, the companies need not be idle. Rather, they can get bridge finance and do the work what they wanted to do with that money. So that is called bridge finance. So these are some of the very crucial aspects and types of instruments and types of sources of various types of finance, particularly from debt point of view. So far we discussed about share capital financing from equity share capital and preference share capital. In the form of debt financing, we had debentures, we have bonds, we have loans from financial institutions, and we have loans from commercial banks. These are the long-term and medium-term sources of financing. Broadly, These are the things that can be expected in the examination as a short note questions, very, very important ones. In the next session, we'll discuss some more types of financing, including venture capital financing, debt securitization. Each of them is a short note question. And let me once again remind you, this bridge finance is a very important short note question, one of the most frequently asked short note question. Masala bonds, those Yankee bonds, that list of those foreign bonds is very important. These are all possible to be asked in the examination. Many a time these were asked also. Bridge finance is one such thing. Venture capital financing is one such thing. Lease financing is one such thing. Same way, this debt securitization is one such thing. The remaining things related to them, venture capital, lease, and debt securitization concept, and some other new types of financing which are possible in the international financing scenario like ADR, GDR, etc. Those all things we'll discuss in the next session, and with that we can conclude this types of financing. But as I already told earlier, the short-term source of finance we are not going to discuss now. We will discuss them as part of working capital management later. So as far as this topic is concerned, we will focus mostly on the long-term and medium-term sources of finance. Almost 60-70% of such sources of finance we already discussed. Remaining types of finances we will discuss in the next session and close this chapter of types of financing then. Till then, take care. Bye-bye. Thank you very much.